Welcome to another edition of the ADP show, brought to you by those of us at dynastyleaguefootball.com. We at DLF got a lot going on. New content hitting every day, rankings, ADP, of course, as well. And the guy that runs all that ADP over at dynastyleaguefootball.com is with me once again, Ryan McDowell. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well, Dan. I already talk ADP here. We're talking fallers. Players losing some value.
Yeah, that's never really what you want to be talking about, but we have to cover the winners and the losers, as we will tonight. Last week we talked about all those that gained a lot of value, so we thought this week it'd probably be best to talk about those who lost. And as we said last week, Ryan, really all of these winners and losers, all of it happened because of what happened at the NFL draft. We're comparing ADP from April to May and the value change, which takes into account a lot more than just the amount of picks or spots that a player falls or gains in ADP. There's a lot more than that goes into it to come up with that value change that we're about to talk about, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as we mentioned last week, it really has to do with where the player's being drafted. If you see a player fall from the second round to the fourth or fifth round, as one of the players that we're going to talk about did, that's a much more significant drop than maybe dropping from the 18th to the 20th, from the 15th to the 20th even. So it's really focusing on those top assets who are losing value after talking about the top assets gaining value last week.
Right. So let's jump right in, Ryan. The player that comes to mind immediately when you think about players that lost a lot of value throughout NFL draft weekend is probably the guy that leads off our checklist of the 5 biggest losers in value change, according to DLF's ADP. That's Kerryon Johnson, running back from the Detroit Lions. Of course, they added a big-time prospect at his position in the draft, so he falls a little bit, and dynasty owners are taking notice.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were concerns heading into the draft about Kerryon Johnson. He had already lost quite a bit of value over the past few months due to injury and really just the mounting injury history he has, unfortunately. So he was already kind of trending down anyway. I don't think it was a surprise that the Lions drafted a running back and not even one of the top backs, DeAndre Swift, not even a surprise that they used that pick on Swift. But it's certainly spells bad news for Kerryon Johnson. We knew this strong running back class would really hurt a lot of backs around the league, and that's going to kind of be a theme of our show today. So Kerryon Johnson specifically falls from an ADP of 58.7 out of the top 100, all the way down to 111.3. Just a huge drop for him. You know, honestly, I think with Kerryon Johnson, we have to be buyers at that point. Outside of the top 100, this is a running back that's 22, 23 years old, even with the injury history, even with the competition in DeAndre Swift. At that price, he's worth a shot.
Yeah, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong. You recently bought Kerryon Johnson for the first time, right?
I did. Got my first share in a league that we share together, and actually, I think I bought him twice in just a couple day span. So
hey, there you go.
That was a weird
feeling.
Take
your own advice.
That's right. Because he was cheap.
Yeah, he's cheap. He certainly is. Now, when it comes to that Detroit running game, to support a guy like Johnson and DeAndre Swift being useful to dynasty owners, there has to be a change in the amount of production that they can put out, because they haven't been all that productive. We haven't seen them finish in the top half of the league in rushing yards since Barry Sanders was in that backfield. So there's a long way to go. If we want Kerryon Johnson to be a useful dynasty asset with Swift in tow as well, there's going to have to be a changing of the guard. They're going to have to commit to that running game, and not only commit to it, play a little defense so they can continue to run the football. Let's talk about the second guy, another running back. Running back's kind of the topic at the top of our heads in this on this list, Ryan. Marlon Mack comes in second here. He drops as well. Another running back, a big name running back, landed in that same backfield, causing him to slide down draft boards.
Yeah, and Mack was in a similar spot, not necessarily with his team, but in a similar value spot in our ADP, both pre-draft and post, was being drafted right behind Kerryon Johnson at 64.2. He also takes a similar huge drop after the Colts used that second round pick on Jonathan Taylor. Mack's ADP drops from 64.2 to 116.5. I'm not quite as confident in buying Mack as I would be with Kerryon Johnson, but still, again, outside of the top 100, we know how hard it is to find a running back right now, and Mack, I think, at least in 2020, is still going to have a role on that Colts offense. He's just shown too much to simply be turned into a full-time backup. So I like also taking a shot on Marlon Mack if he's cheap enough. And
the problem maybe in dynasty leagues is we all tend to look towards 2021, 2 or 3 years down the road, and thinking of that ideal landing spot for Marlon Mack once his contract is up in Indianapolis is difficult. So investing in players like that can be tough at times.
Yeah, certainly. And the good thing about that is at the price Mack is at, and honestly, I think his trade value is probably even lower than this ADP might reflect. I think there's a chance you could buy him for a third round pick. Based on that value, both his ADP and his trade value, you don't have to get 2 to 3 to 4 years out of him. If you get one useful year, if he turns into a flex player in 2020, that's worth the investment.
Yeah, and that's certainly in the range of outcomes for a guy like Mack, who was so productive over the last few years and certainly has at least a role in that Indianapolis backfield despite the presence of Jonathan Taylor. How about Leonard Fournette? Maybe not the draft in particular that did it to Fournette, because they didn't add a talented running back like we saw in Detroit and Indianapolis with Johnson and Mack. Instead, there were some rumors floating around about Leonard Fournette, and he took a dip in ADP as well.
Yeah, we often see trade rumors hurting a player's value. That becomes even worse when we hear trade rumors followed up by reports of there were no takers. And that's what we had with Leonard Fournette, that the Jags had basically had enough. They were ready to dump him. And due to that contract he has, they just couldn't find any interested team. So he's still with the Jaguars. We can assume for now he's going to be the starter in 2020. I still certainly wouldn't be surprised if he's off that team in some form or another before the season starts. And if that's the case, I think he might have a hard time finding another starting job based both on his frustrating and inconsistent production and just his general attitude. They've had some off-field problems with him and team management. So Leonard Fournette trending down for a good reason. He's that second-round player I was talking about. 24.7 was his pre-draft ADP, now down to 40.2. And Dan, we're just starting our June mock drafts today. I won't be surprised if he's a guy we're talking about later this month as another faller.
Yeah, if somebody were to ask me, Ryan, who's the player that you see on trade blocks in your dynasty leagues more than any other, it'd be Leonard Fournette. It seems like there's nobody, not only in the NFL circles, but also in dynasty circles, that wants Leonard Fournette on their roster. The only outcast of the group, and I say that because we finally get to a position other than running back on our list of, I guess, fallers from DLF ADP from April to May. That's Michael Gallup. The Cowboys added CeeDee Lamb in the draft, early in the draft. Seems like dynasty owners really were shocked right away. The news immediately made dynasty owners think, oh my gosh, what's going to happen to Gallup? He's a huge loser. Since then, Ryan, it seems like it's recovered slightly, at least for the short term. People have gotten a level head and realized that Gallup has come a long way and will certainly have a role in that offense in 2020. but nevertheless, his ADP fell, and it's reason for concern for dynasty owners.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw both Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup perform as top 25 fantasy wide receivers a year ago. Now with the addition of CeeDee Lamb, who obviously we have high hopes for, both on the field for the Cowboys, and that translating into fantasy production and dynasty value. Somebody's got to be the loser in that group. Somebody is going to take a hit. In reality, it's probably a combination of Cooper and Gallup, seeing a ding in their stats from the past year or so. But Gallup, as the more uncertain asset, is the one that we see with the immediate drop in value. He goes from 56, an ADP of 56, and he was trending up pre-draft. He was a player that was gaining value and was kind of becoming a trendy asset, a player that was changing hands quite a bit in dynasty leagues. So he goes from an ADP of 56 to an ADP of 80.8. And just as I said with Kerryon Johnson and Marlon Mack, I would be buying him all day. In fact, he's the player on this list that I would be most confident in buying, not only because of his success with the Cowboys, but just his future. He's still a young wide receiver. He's not going away. Maybe he's going away from Dallas. Maybe he ultimately leaves that team, but he's a young, talented player and will be around for a while.
Yeah, if he were to hit NFL free agency, he'd be one of those premier guys that NFL teams would be coveting and trying to get after. If he landed in the right spot, could take a big upward tick. A guy we could be talking about in future off seasons as a riser. The final guy we want to talk about, Ryan, another running back that saw some competition added to the backfield on NFL draft weekend. That's Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. Really seen as one of those running backs that you could probably depend on coming into draft weekend. Things changed drastically as they added A.J. Dillon early in the NFL draft. There were signs pre-draft that maybe the Packers were interested in a new contract for Aaron Jones. Haven't heard those kind of rumblings since Dillon was brought aboard. What are your thoughts on Aaron Jones in Green Bay and his fall, according to DLF ADP?
Well, his fall was not quite as bad as some of the other running backs we have talked about. He goes from 23.3, so he, like Fournette, was in that second round range, late second rounder. He goes from 23.3 to 32.2, so dropping about 10 spots. But again, that early in the draft, that's a significant drop, especially when you're talking about just a 1 month time span. So I don't know, Dan, I'm really confused about this one. I don't know what to expect about Dillon. For the most part, he was not a player dynasty owners were enamored with pre-draft. I think most consider him to be overdrafted where the Packers took him. But I think it's just another bad sign for Jones and his future. And we continually get those bad signs, mostly with his usage. They continue to go back to Jamal Williams when he's healthy. And it's just been a frustrating situation. But I mean, this is a guy who was he was the top 5 running back on the season and really a breakout year for him. So the touchdown regression is something that we can kind of see coming. And now with the addition of Dillon, it's just another strike for Aaron Jones. I would still love to see him get that contract extension. And I think if it does, it would certainly solidify his value.
Yeah, it would solidify, maybe bring it back up to where we saw it pre-draft. The having Dillon, that horse in that backfield, certainly makes you think twice about double-digit touchdowns happening. Once again, those opportunities at the goal line probably going to go away for Aaron Jones, even if he does get that contract. So maybe instead of those high-end running back one expectations that dynasty owners have come to get over the last season, maybe that drops just a little bit. Ryan, this has been another episode of the ADP show. We covered those five players that dropped big time because of the NFL draft between April and May, the ADP. We'll be back again next week covering more of this ADP data that Ryan puts together for dynastyleaguefootball.com. If you're out and about checking things out on the web, looking for more Dynasty content, click content, click onto dynastyleaguefootball.com. New content hitting the site every single day. Lots of great tools that you can use to dominate your leagues, the ADP, the rankings. I can go on and on, but we're out of time. For Ryan, I'm Dan. Thanks for watching this episode of the ADP Show. We'll catch you again next time.